Welcome back to the Always Reading Book Club. It is your girl Kiki Reader, and we're going to do the third book in the series today, which is also going to be the last one that I'm going to review of this series. But there are more books available, um, and I'm going to read them myself. But this is going to be the last one for this series, and the name of the third book is called Mended. Let me start out by saying that I did forget one thing in our last book. Which was called Fractured. So when she was packing up her stuff and getting ready to leave, Luke told her that he loved her. And she told him, don't do that. That's not going to work. I don't want you saying that to me out of desperation. And then she still left. Okay, so now we're picking up from there. So Leah's left. He's upset, of course, Luke is. He's gone outside because he's thinking about going after her. And his aunt has come over. So they were supposed to meet up for lunch because they were going to have a conversation where he was going to tell his aunt about his addiction and, him needing help and to see if they could do some type of outpatient program for him. But since he never showed up, she came to the apartment. And so they're going to go to this coffee shop and they're going to have a conversation to find out everything that's going on because the aunt clearly sees something's happened because he's upset. So he starts telling his aunt about his cocaine addiction. She, of course, is really shocked. She knew he had some type of vice, but she didn't think it was cocaine. And so she's kind of mad at herself because she's like, I wish I, would have tried to have figured out what vice you were using, to try and get you to stop. And he let her know that if she would have tried to make him stop, he would have cut her off, because that is what helped him cope these past 8 years. He then goes into telling her, well, I'm sorry, she tells him about, she has a friend that runs an alcohol program, but some of the withdrawals are kind of similar. And so she'll have a conversation with him about trying to maybe do some type of outpatient program. His aunt then tells him, after he tells everything that happened with Leah, she does tell him, listen, if she needs time, give her time. She was like, call Rose, make sure she made it there okay. But again, if she tells you she needs more time, then that's what you need to do. So he calls Rose. Rose doesn't really know what's happened. She just knows that Leah was just saying that she needed some space. So she's trying to get the tea from Luke, but he's not going to say anything. Before his aunt leaves, she tells him, you need to tell her everything. You need to tell her even the stuff that you've never told me or anyone else. You need to tell her everything so that you all can really get past and really get through this. So Leah's is at Rose's apartment. She tells Rose everything that happened. Rose is shocked, of course, and they get a knock on the door. Of course, it's Luke. Um, it's funny because she knew he wasn't going to be able to stay away. And she didn't really want him to stay away either. But she was just so angry. And at that moment, she needed space. I think also to kind of make him really get to that place of this stuff is affecting us at such a place that you've got to talk about this. The secrets are getting too much. Everything needs to be out on the table. And so I think for her, she felt like I need to get out of this space because as long as I stay here, like he'll just, he's not going to tell me. But I think her actually leaving pretty much helped. So Rose goes in her room and they're going to talk. um he does tell her, he apologizes again with the whole thing with about the father, and he was just like, I would never push you to like try and have a relationship with him. I wasn't trying to hide it from you. I just thought because you had so much going on, I was just trying to protect you. I realized that wasn't the right decision, but in other words, my decision wasn't based in malice. And so she does understand that. She of course wants to talk about Cassie, and he was kind of like, "Listen, I'll tell you everything, but I want to do this at home. I don't want to say that here, because you got to remember it's a secret, and Rose is in the other room. He don't know if Rose is listening, so he wants to be in a safe space, and her ass wants to go home anyway. So she was like, okay. So then before she leaves, we find out that Rose's ass is on the phone with Max, and she basically called him and said that she was, thinking about doing some evil shit to Jake. And so Max is trying to talk her off the ledge. So this is the little game she likes to play. That girl is so crazy. They get to Luke's apartment. He tells a story. So what had happened was that him and Aiden were friends first. They were best friends. And then Cassie came along, and she was kind of determined to be their friend, and she wore him down. So then they all became friends. Well, as they got older, um Aiden had a thing for her, but she had a thing for Luke. So in high school, Luke and Cassie started dating, and that went into their college years. So it's always been rough. It's always different spells of her up and down behavior because she is bipolar. She's always accusing him of cheating, just different stuff. So when they get to college, she found out that she was pregnant. So she wanted to get rid of it. He begged for her to keep it. And that's, of course, when he asked her to marry him. And so she wouldn't take the baby out. So he eventually got fed up, of course, with the stuff that she was doing and was just like, I'm done. Like, I can't do this anymore. And so when he went to leave, she did this like manic laugh. And so he left and went to a party. He had already gotten drunk before he even got to the party. He wound up fucking somebody. He doesn't remember the girl's name, but he knows he fucked her, and whoever she was, he told her, he felt horrible about it, and he left and ran back to the apartment. And when he got there, he fell asleep on the couch. He woke up, and Cassie was on top of him, and she was just pretty much like, is this how you fucked her? And that's when she slit right underneath his neck, which is where he still has that scar. And so then right before Aiden came, she plunged the knife into her stomach, took the baby out. So Aiden comes into that mess. Okay. So they apparently have not talked about it. He didn't want to press charges against her because he knew she had a mental break. She just needed to get help, and that was kind of the end of it. So we do know that she apparently has said that her father was really awful and stuff, but it's starting to kind of seem like maybe the father just couldn't cope. He couldn't deal with her. And he's been MIA, I think, since she left for probably before she left for college. He's been gone. Um, he doesn't even think, Luke, he doesn't even think the dad knew about the kid, because, Cassie would lie a lot. Um, so so he doesn't know like what's true and not with her. So when he was done, Leah asked, "Well, how did she find out about the girl?" And he's like, "I don't know." He's like, "I kind of beat myself up for a while over that, because I kept trying to figure out like how did she find out. I could never come to a conclusion." And he was like, maybe someone took a picture, sent it to her, and that's how she found out. He also told Leah about her recent progress, and he was concerned. And Leah was just kind of like, well, if she's starting to remember some stuff, or if she's thinking that things were as it was back then, she's gonna still believe you all are in a relationship, right? And he's like, I don't know, she might. It's a lot to wrap your head around. It's a lot of stuff. So Aiden, of course, is still in love with the girl. And I think, it's kind of that thing of being in love with who they once was and wishing they could return to that person. I think that's probably more so his issue. But Luke did say, if they're going to be together, I wouldn't stop him. I wouldn't stand his way. Um, he just doesn't really want to be involved with anything with her. So the next morning, Luke's having his breakfast, and then Leah comes in. They have a doctor's appointment today. She starts spiraling because she's like, "Oh my gosh, I could have took a test. I didn't even take a pregnancy test." And she's like, "How could I be so thoughtless?" She's spiraling. And he just pretty much tells her, "Listen, you've had a lot of stuff come at you. Chill out. It's okay. Give yourself some grace." So then she gets a phone call, and it's from Rose. Rose is mad at her because apparently she'd been blowing up the phone the night before and she hadn't gotten an answer. But eventually she had messaged Luke, and he did reply back saying, Lee is asleep. Everything's fine. So then she's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry. I didn't get back to you, blah, blah, blah." So then we find out what Rose's ass has got going on. So Rose had called and told Max this whole mess about Jake. She had told him that Jake has been sending her threatening text messages and phone calls. The text messages are coming from her burner phone. I'm like, oh my gosh, this girl is crazy. So because of this, Max comes over. He, of course, is telling her, you need to get a restraining order against him, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, asked him if he would go with her in the morning. So she's a mess. So then it's kind of like, what are you going to do? Because when you get there tomorrow, like, this is all fake, false information proof, like, you can't do that. But she's pretty much like, she'll figure that out when they get there. I said, oh my gosh. So then Luke gets to the office. Max comes in. He's got a t-shirt and some pants on. And, Luke's like, what's going on? And he tells him what happened with Rose. So he figured that Rose was lying because there was no way a guy like Jake was going to come after her after he was clearly so terrified of her before. So Luke is basically like, listen, you either need to see where this is going to go or cut this off completely. He's like, we both know when you don't want to deal with people, you don't deal with them, you know? So Max is just like, you know what, let me go home. Because he was going to take the day off, but he was like, no, just let me go home, change clothes, and I'll be back in a few hours. So Luke and Leah go to the doctor. He wants to stay in the room with her, and she wants him there as well. So, of course, Leah's doctor asks her, is this okay? Because if you don't want him here, I will make him leave. And she's like, no, 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 I want him here. They take the test. Leah is pregnant. Everyone's shocked. She does a little spiral. Luke is very calm. He's in shock, but he's very calm. So they go to Leo's for dinner or lunch or whatever. And she had a little mini breakdown before they went inside. Just her brain thinking and thinking and thinking, oh my gosh, what's going to happen? Am I going to turn into my mom once I have a baby? All of these things, these are legit thoughts for someone to have, especially if you had that type of parent. That's a legit fear I could understand her having. So they go to dinner. And while they're at the table, he puts his hand underneath her, starts fingering her. She's about to come when the server comes up and brings their food. She's mortified. But then after the server leaves, he finishes her off. And then the owner pops up, Leo, and she's so embarrassed. So then they go home. And actually, no, before they got there, she did ask him, how do you feel about this? Like, is this is this like a redo for you since you weren't able to be a father the first time around? And she felt guilty for asking him this, and she apologized as soon as she asked it, and he was like, no, don't apologize. you know he tells her, I haven't fully processed it. I'm okay. So then they get back to his place, and she says, I know I freaked out, but I would never harm our baby. I don't want you to think that. And he's just kind of like, what are you talking about? It finally hits him what she's saying because of what Cassie did. Casey, is it? No, it's Cassie. Cassie is Cassie. So because of what Cassie did, she's terrified because she had that spiral. He might think she's crazy too, and she doesn't want him to think she'd hurt a baby. I was like, oh, that's so oof, oof, oh, that's just so rough. And he told her, listen, I didn't even think that way. There are no parallels. He's like, you have gone through a lot. And he says the difference between you and her is that you've tried to go through life and literally be the best person that you can be in spite of what you've gone through. She used whatever she went through as a way to manipulate people. He's like, you two are nothing alike. Like, in other words, get that out your head. A month passes. Luke is having some withdrawal issues. He's been eating a lot more. He's been running more to try and kind of offset all of the extra eating. I think it's a bit of the withdrawals as well as probably some of the sympathy pregnancy stuff as well. She's getting sick more. He did start taking some medicine to help him with it because he wasn't a daily user, right? So normally where someone would have completely crashed, he's been able to go a little bit longer. But he still needed to take something to help him with the withdrawal process. And that has been helping him. He's starting to feel a little bit better. Um, she's in class with Rose and Leah is, and they're in their psychology class. They have a boring professor. And they're having their little side conversation. Rose gets a text from her parents and she gets upset. And basically, her parents are trying to set her up with someone that they deem worthy. So they go to a little coffee shop afterwards, and Leah's like, it's your life. You should be able to do what you want. They shouldn't be able to control everything. And she was like, well, they pay for everything, so therefore they control everything. She was like, when I had this job working at the coffee shop, my father threatened to cut me off. He said my grades were slipping, but it wasn't that. It was that he was afraid I was going to get from underneath him. So he had threatened to stop paying her tuition. So basically, he sent her to school just to be a well spoken woman around whomever she marries, around his business, their business contacts and associates. That's crazy. So then she's like, well, I gotta go. She like flips a switch and she's like, well, I gotta go. She did say before she left with Max that she knows he wants to fuck her, but basically he's playing games and she feels as if, you know, now he wants to ignore her calls and stuff like that. But it's like he's not playing games. He does want you, but you're a lot. You seem like a problem. And you keep doing things to interject him into your life. So I don't it's not that he's playing games. You're the one playing games, you know? He don't necessarily want to deal with the drama attached to you. He clearly has an attraction to her, but she's a lot. So now Luca's in his office. Aiden comes and they're going over this deal of this business they're trying to acquire. And before they jump into that issue, Aiden starts talking about Cassie. And he does ask, how Leah's doing and everything like that. So then Aiden starts talking about the progress with Cassie. So apparently she's doing even better, and they're talking about letting her do a visit out of the facility. Luke tenses up because he's like, oh gosh, like, he doesn't want that to happen. But he had given everything over to Aiden to kind of make those decisions. And so Aiden's like, I think it would help her and all this type of stuff. And this other bullshit about how much he loves her. And Luke just kind of tells him, listen, I understand that you have feelings for her. I get it. He was like, but this motherfucker done slit my throat, and she killed my kid. Like, I don't know what response you want from me. And Aiden kind of winces at what he says, but no, that's what fucking happened. And so you're asking the person that endured that to be okay with a visit? Like, You you know what I mean? Like that right there, I understand you loving somebody, but this is when I would more so say this is unhealthy, and this is probably more so an obsession with an idea of a person, is what I think Aiden has. Because if you love Luke, like he's your brother and all that type of stuff, I don't see how you can be like, okay, and yeah, she tried to take you out. Yeah, she killed your kid, but she's messed up mentally. I just that's not good enough, That's not good enough to me. And I feel like as close as they are, that should have been enough for him to not still want to have these lingering feelings. Like, I understand you can't control how you feel, but some should be able to kill that shit. You know what I mean? Because this is just I'm sorry. I don't know what response he thought Luke was supposed to have. But to me, it just seems selfish on Aiden's part. You're basically trying to get a happiness with a woman that has never loved you, right? So this is unrequited love. That's the worst of them all, you know? And that's clearly what he has. But I think it's fucked up. That was my little rant. After Aiden leaves, old boy pulled out that drawer, but there's no cocaine there anymore. But that was a hell of a lot for him to have to take in. But thankfully there was no stuff in there. They go to her doctor's appointment. They see the baby. It's an emotional moment for them. They can hear the heartbeat. They both have tears in their eyes. A couple of the women, of course, they're looking at Lucian, and it strikes some jealousy in old girl. And at first, he thought she was like kind of playing about it. He didn't realize she was serious. And she started crying, and he was like, "Oh my gosh, like I'm so sorry. Like I thought you understood. Like I don't see nobody else. Like it's just you." And she's just like, I know I'm being emotional, all this type of crap. And she apologized. So then they go to breakfast, and she goes to a place, I think it was called Serafina's or something like that. And they get there, and Lee Jackson's there. So we find out that Lee has been messaging her quite frequently, letting her know what time he's going to be at Serafina's, and if she wants to join him, she can. And so today she decided to go. Luke looks pissed. Um, because, it's not like she couldn't tell him. I almost feel like a part of that was kind of like a get back a little bit. I kind of feel like that. It didn't say it in the book, but I just kind of felt like probably a part of that was probably, a little get back. So they sit down and have a conversation. It's a good time. She tells Lee about her being pregnant. He says, congratulations. He's like, it looks like I just don't get a daughter, I get a grandkid too. And he said something to Luke about marrying her, and of course he's like, I'd marry her today, but it's got to be something that Leah would want as well. And Leah doesn't want a shotgun wedding. She doesn't want that. She's like, it may be unconventional. We're doing it maybe what's considered backwards, but it's what's working for us, and we're good. So then they're on their way back, and he says to her, I'm sorry, before he says anything, she apologizes to him for not telling him. And she just kind of says, I didn't know if I was going to go until we were standing there. And so that's why I didn't say anything. And he, of course, is like, fine, basically anything to make you happy, I'll do. However you want to proceed with your relationship with your father, like I'll support you in whatever you want to do. And so then, of course, they have this little freaky moment because he was just like, you going to set me off before I go to work? And she's like, of course. So a little time has passed, and girl can't fit in any more of her clothes. She's freaking out. Um, Luke finds something for her to wear, but before that, she was spazzing so bad, she just kind of started threatening him and was like, I'm not fucking you no more," and all this type of stuff. So he picked her up, and he had his dick like between her legs, and he was just kind of like, "Oh, so you're not gonna fuck me anymore?" And of course she got wet, and then she was like begging him to fuck her. So then he goes to work, and Max comes to see him, and he brings up the whole thing about um hold on, let me say this correctly. Luke brought up the thing about Rose and Max because Leah feels like they really like each other, and that if Max would just kind of make a move, she would go for it, and it would kind of help her solve the issue with her dad trying to fix her up with these different guys. Luke didn't want to get involved in this, but he loves Leah, do whatever he does, whatever. So Max is like, the problem is that I'm not trying to get involved with anything right now. You know? Um Luke knows he has a past, but he just doesn't know exactly what it involves and what has him to where he will not get in a relationship. So then they deviate from that conversation, and Max brings up Cassie because he's trying to change that subject. And so Max is no longer, a co guardian either. So it used to be Luke, Max, and Aiden, but they gave everything to Aiden. And so Max was just kind of like, do you think that's a good idea? Because you know how Aiden feels about her. I don't know if he can be partial, I don't know if he can make the right decision when it comes to her because it's going to be based upon emotion. And that can be deadly. And I agree with him. He's absolutely right. So then Luke told him about the possible trip thing, and Max flipped his shit. He's like, that is not a good idea. He's like, no, we need to talk to him because that cannot happen. And so Luke was just like, listen, let's just see what happens. If we need to step in, then we'll do it then. Right now, we're just gonna let him handle it. So Rose and Leah go shopping. She takes her to Nordstrom's. They get some clothes, and then uh Leah was just kind of like, hey, you should get something different. And she gets these leather pants, and Rose just looks at her and is like, she almost sounded like a robot. She was just like, I already have my clothes for the season, and everything matches. I can't get anything else. And she has these moments different times to where it's like this little mini breakdown she's having, and she just shakes it off, and then she goes back to her perky self. And Leah's just like, damn, is anybody in my life normal? They have another doctor's appointment. They find out they're having a girl, so they're all misty eyed. It's super sweet. They're gonna stop by Aiden's apartment because there's paper that there's a some contracts that need to be signed for the deal. So they go by Aiden's apartment, and guess who comes in the door? Aiden and Cassie. So Luke doesn't know what to do. He sees, she looks smaller, she looks paler, but he's freaking out. Leah's trying to figure out who she is, and so she just kind of goes up to her and says, "Hi, I'm Leah. Nice to meet you, and you are?" And the girl grabs her belly and says, "Why do you have my baby?" And Luke freaked the fuck out. He grabbed her and got her the hell out of there. Got Leah out. Luke gets Leah in the elevator, and he's apologizing profuse. He's like, "Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry." He's like, "That was not supposed to happen. She is not supposed to be here." He's like, "I am so sorry." Now, see, he has full guardianship of her. So he's made a decision that affects other people. And because he was so ready to bring her home, you know, look what the fuck just happened. And this is because everything's about him trying to get back this fucking love that fucking never even felt that way about him. That's just ugh. And I figured this is why the responsibility of her care should not have gone to him. See, some people may feel like, okay, well, he does love her, he cares about her, he's not gonna do anything to hurt her, right? But he also wants something with her. And he's been waiting for 8 years. Like, he's been going to see her every weekend. You see what I'm saying? So he's starting to see, oh, it's paying off. She's coming back to me. And his decisions are based on his what he wants and not what's necessarily best for Cassie. Everybody else, she's a hazard. I'm sorry. Next day, he has a conversation with Aiden. He is pissed. He's like, why the fuck did you do that? Why didn't you tell me? And Aiden was like, I didn't know you were going to be there. If I'd have known, I wouldn't have done it. He was like, I wasn't planning on taking her. The doctor had said that, he brought up the thing about bringing her home for a night because of this new drug that she's on. So, of course, they're trying to, they're trying to get data. So, of course, they're going to want to push this because they're trying to see, exactly how far, like, how much has she really progressed? Let's put her in another environment. So then Aiden decided, he's going to take a leave of absence. He's going to rent a place close to the facility so that he can visit her and she can come and stay with him there. He says he just needs a break. He needs to see if she has a fighting chance. And so he wants to do it this way. Um, he doesn't he says he doesn't feel the same way about her as he did before, but he just can't at the same time let her go. So he's going to keep paying Aiden because, he's family. So then Luke tells Leah about the situation with Aiden, and he kind of opens up a little bit more about how it was each day with Cassie, not knowing what you were going to have to deal with. He would have to go through the apartment, check to see if there was anything that she could use to hurt herself, because that was a threat a lot about she was going to take herself out. Making sure Aiden didn't bring any alcohol or anything else in the house. He wouldn't even wear a belt. Um, just these different checks he'd have to do on his lunch break, and it was just like he sometimes would need a break, and so he would go to the park and just watch families, just to give him some type of reprieve. I was like, Pope, I just felt bad for him because it was like he was trying to do everything he could possibly do, and you got to think he's a what 18, 19, 20-year-old person doing this. How many people will do that? So that was a lot. And so Leah just kind of tells him, you really need to forgive yourself. You dealt with something that you weren't equipped to do, that you weren't equipped to deal with. That girl had real mental issues. And you've got to forgive yourself for that. You are only human. So then Aiden now has been gone for a month. He normally just emails updates, but he calls this day and he says, there's something happened. He needs to see him in person. So he goes to meet up with him in a little pub, and we find out that he got served papers from a court saying that someone is petitioning for guardianship over Cassie. So it's apparently some distant family person, and their name is April Chester. So they don't know of anyone. Lucas has put Max on it to kind of see what is fully going on. So Luca is also pissed because he's like, first of all, where was this fucking family member when I've been, footing the bill all these years? So Max is going to do some digging to try and find out what's fully going on. And then I think he leaves. And then Aiden tells Luke about how he did tell Cassie who Leah was. And he was like, pretty much like, why'd you do that? He was like, well, she did ask, and, I thought it was a good idea for her to kind of try and, understand and accept what's, real. And so she just kind of said, you know, was that Luke's girlfriend? And I said yes. And then she was like, well, as long as he's happy, I just want him to be happy. I don't buy that shit though. So it's the day of Leah's graduation. Rose is going to take her because Luke had a meeting with Max and Aiden, we find out that that business is a preliminary hearing about the whole thing with Cassie. And guess who comes through the door? Monique. So Monique is April Chester. Chester is her last name from when she was married, and apparently he was really abusive, and so she had to cut ties with her family and relocate, change her name. But clearly something's up because we found out that they are kind of related. Her father married Cassie's mother, because I think Cassie's mother left when like she was like 2, and she moved to Charlotte. So she was only a couple of hours away. That's a shame. But anyway, she remarried to Monique, April's dad. And she never talked about this previous child, and they didn't know about it until she passed away, which is like 2 years ago, and they found the birth certificate of Cassie. So then she at some point started trying to seek her out, and she's trying to say that it's like, they've already done so much for her, but now, her and her father, they're family, and they need to, help her. And I don't know. I don't trust this bitch. So this is just like So the judge grants a continuance because this is some mess. So they all go to the graduation. She invited Lee and Peter and Kara. Kara's now bleach her hair brown because she was happy about this because it was kind of creepy with her having blonde hair because she looked really similar to Leah. Aiden is kind of looking at Kara, but he looks so distressed. His eyes are black. It's po thing. He looks so pitiful. But Leah just kind of looked and was like, she hopes one day he can move on because he looks so drained. So afterwards, they go to Leo's because Lucian had bought it out, rented it out for her graduation party. She goes to the bathroom. Monique's ass is in there. She, of course, tries to throw some lobs at her and says, you lucked out getting pregnant. You'll have a direct line for at least 18 years and all this type of crap. And then she drops the bomb about having seen him, Luke, earlier that day. So now Leah's pissed and she wants an explanation from Luke because first of all, people, especially when there's a history with a person, people don't want to get what's the word? It's a word and I can't think of it. But people don't want to get. I'm gonna say I don't. That's not it. I'm gonna think of it. It'll come to me later. But you don't want to be shocked with information in front of somebody like that, right? Because it's almost like they know they got you. They got a one up on you, because they know something you don't know. And they shouldn't be able to do that. So they leave and they go to their apartment. Before, I forgot to mention this, Rose's parents didn't stay to the graduation. Like they literally just came with a photographer to take photos, but they didn't want to be around people that were beneath their social class. So clearly they're awful. So they get back to the apartment and she of course blurts out, "So why did you see Monique earlier today?" So of course he tells her everything and she's like, "Something's wrong. We're missing something." She's got to have more in play than just this long lost stepsister that she wants to help. But he was like, "I'm going to try, and we're trying to find out, you know, if what she's saying is true. You know, we're just trying to figure this shit out, basically." So then, of course, after that, they have a hard fuck session. So then Luke and Aiden meet up at a pub, and Max is going to come soon, and they got to discuss a strategy. So Max comes, and we find out a little bit more information. So Monique was telling the truth about the abusive ex-husband, um but they still can't figure out kind of why she's doing this, right? Because they don't know if it's a matter of she trying to stay in her father's good graces, because apparently after the mother died, that's when they found out about Cassie. And so his first thought, of course, is to try and help, and they're still trying to figure out what her end game is, basically. So Max does give his opinion and say, listen, I don't think you should fight this. I think you should let them like you should just release it to them, because I think it's going to be a losing battle. Aiden, of course, doesn't want to do that because he feels like he's given up on her. So then Luke goes home, and before he gets there, Lee actually came over there to talk to Leah. They now have a really good relationship they're building. They meet once a week for breakfast. It's a sweet thing. She's not upset with him anymore. She doesn't have any anger at him. And she wants him to forgive himself as well. So basically, Lee comes over with a proposal. He bought a medical company that's been doing really bad due to poor management the last few years, and he wants to partner up with her so they can run it together. So this is like right up her alley, her being able to analyze a business. And so she, of course, is really excited about this. But at the same time, she doesn't want him to do this as a way of trying to like make up for something. She's like, I don't want it to be for that reason. And he says, no, it's not that. You're good at this. You have a great business mind. And so you would just be great to do this with. So then Luke comes home, and they have a conversation about everything, and afterwards she winds up asking Luke to marry her. And then we find out he's been wanting to ask her, and he has all these different writings. He was trying to figure out a way to ask her. He even got his grandmother's princess cut diamond ring, and yes, he never gave this ring to Cassie. Never did. But he had been using floss at night to try and get a ring size. I thought that was so cute. Rose is with Leah. They're talking about wedding plans because she wants to try and get married before the babies do. And Rose is like, that's not enough time, you know? And so Rose asked her if she's going to, take the job, that partnership with Lee. And she says, yeah, she's going to do it. So she's really excited. She's not going to start until after the baby's born and is like a couple months old. And Lee's like, we could turn one of the spaces into a nursery so you can bring the baby with you. You can work as much as you want. She wants to start off doing part time, and he's completely fine with that. So this is going to be a really good thing for her. I'm excited for her. So then Aiden and Max and Luke, they're in his office. They're having a conversation, and he tells them about the engagement, and they're all happy for him. And then Aiden tells the decision that he's not going to fight Monique. He's decided to basically relinquish guardianship over to her. So some time has passed. Monique has now decided she's going to take Cassie for a visit to Colorado to visit Monique's father, who apparently is too sick to travel. She apparently has been bringing Cassie to her apartment for visits and things like that, and they've been going really well. She doesn't want Aiden to go on this trip, which is strange because something's got to be up with that. We fast forward. It's the weekend before they're going to get married. She has like a month left to give birth, and she wakes up in the middle of the night because she can't sleep. And Luke gets up soon after because he can't really sleep if she's not in the bed. And she tells him about a baby name that she thought of, which would be Laura Ann. Laura is his mother's first name, and Ann is Deborah's middle name. And Deborah's been a mother to her in every way which counts. And he, of course, loves it. So Luke gets a text from Aiden saying, hey, I need you to come by the apartment. Something's going on. We need to talk. He hauls ass over there. Aiden's not there. Monique is there. And we find out the whole damn story. So the woman that he slept with that night in college was Monique, aka formerly known as April Chester. So she had been infatuated with Luke as well as Cassie. And the fact that Cassie always treated him like shit, and was always a bitch to her, in her brain, she felt like she would be a better thing for Luke. And so that night she got him extra drunk. I think she even put some in his drink. So then afterwards, after they fucked, he told her it was a mistake. He went back to Cassie. She was pissed. She called Cassie and told Cassie that he had just left her place. They had just fucked, and this had been going on for weeks. He jumps up because he's ready to kill her because he's like, "You're the reason she spiraled like that and killed my baby." And she was like, "It wasn't my fault. I was just trying to do what was best for you." So she's a complete nutcase too. So then we find out that she has Cassie with Leah at Luke's apartment. So now he's trying to haul ass over there. We switch over to Leah. She's coming home. She goes into the nursery that they're putting together. On the wall is written mine. She thought it was a joke until she touched it and realized it was permanent. And then she knew something was wrong. So then Cassie appears and says, "Why do you have my baby?" So Leah tries to be like, "Okay, where's Aiden? And she said, "Spence," because she calls him Spence. She said, "Spence isn't here. He's a few states over." And so this dumb girl, Leah, gonna turn her back, and that bitch hit her in the head with a fucking hammer. And you know what? I'm not even mad at her, because why would you ever turn your back on crazy? You shouldn't do it with normal people, but you damn sure shouldn't do it with crazy people. So she wakes up, she passes out, she wakes up, there's smoke everywhere, she can see fire. She thought it was Luke she saw, but it wasn't Luke, it was Aiden. And then there's Cassie, and she apparently Leah's tied up, and Aiden's like trying to get Cassie to stop, he's like, "You're gonna kill us all." And she was like, "That's my baby. They're trying to take my baby away from me, and I'm not going to let it happen." So that girl was willing to kill all of them. She had resigned. She was going to die. So she had to take them out of her mind as well. That's wild. So then Leah at that moment believed that was it. She was going to die. So she just started having beautiful thoughts of her, Luke, and the baby. And then when someone grabbed her, she's like, "Stop it," because she was trying to stay in that beautiful place. And Aiden was like, "No, come on, get up. We got to get out of here." And so he grabbed Leah and he had to push Cassie back. And he let out this gut wrenching scream when he did it, Because you got to remember, it's a whole fucking fire going on. And so Leah gets out to the sidewalk. The ambulance reaches there. Luke finally gets there. Rose and Max are there. Apparently, they were having dinner at Leo's. So Leah's like, she wondered, what that's about. But of course, now is not the time to try to find out. So she does ask Rose, stay with Aiden, you know. And she's like, tells Max as well, stay with him, like, because he needs you. Because Cassie didn't survive that. And they knew it. So Luke, of course, she tried to tell Luke to stay. But Luke said, "I'm not leaving you, Hang that up." They don't even know she's been hit in the back of the head because, that's going to be a whole nother thing. So we get to the wedding day, and Aiden and Luke have a conversation, and we find out that Cassie, when he pushed her back into the room, the door wasn't locked, but when they got to her, the door was locked. So she, of course, did that. I think she knew she couldn't face what she had done, and I think she also wanted whatever torture was going on in her head. I think she just wanted it all to end. They found out that Monique ass tried to run. They got her on attempted murder. She was at the border, and they got her, so she's in prison. Of course, she doesn't have any bail because she's a flight risk. Um, they find out that basically Monique had told Cassie that Leah had stole her baby, and that if Leah was out of the way, she could get Luke back, and she could have her family back, and that Leah was the one who had slept with Luke all those years ago. So clearly, like I said, she's demented and crazy as well, and clearly evil. The mere fact that you're willing to do that to somebody that you know has a mental issues. And so basically she did it because she wanted revenge. I'm like, dang, that's why some people you just can't fuck. You just can't do. Like, jeez. That's so wild. But anyway, so um Aiden, poor thing, he looks so bad. He's been doing nothing but drinking, so he's lost some weight. He down bad. They get married. Lee Jax walks her down the aisle. They're closer. She even calls him dad from time to time. She has a bond with Peter and his daughter as well. So it's a good thing. Apparently there's a son, but there was a scheduling conflict, and so he didn't make it, but that's probably another story that that you'll probably read about in another one of the books. While they're at the reception, her water breaks. So she goes, has the baby at the hospital. After they come home, Aiden and Luke talk one more time, and Aiden says he's leaving. He's moving away. He doesn't know if he's ever going to come back. He's going to disconnect the phone. He will keep his email open, but he's like, only use it for emergencies. He's just like, he's got to get away from here. He's got to kind of, find himself again. But Lucas, he's happy. He's able to move forward. He does grieve for his friend, but he is looking forward to a life with his wife and child. And that is how Luke and Leah's story ends. I love that. I thought that was such great writing. Absolutely adored it. Again, I'm not going to review the other books. There's quite a few more. I think there's one about Max, one about Rose. It's different ones in there. So feel free, because I know I'm going to read them on my own time, to like read those books so you can see how those other character stories end. Let me know what you all think. Drop down in that comment section and let me know. Not just this book, but maybe the whole series, how you felt about it. If you are in the market for a beautiful journal or notebook, I do have a link for those as well listed in the description section. Um, Make sure you like and subscribe. And as always, I truly do thank you all for your support and thank you for tuning in to the Always Reading Book Club.